I love baked mac and cheese because it's creamy, cheesy, and it's one of those nice dishes that you can have in the winter when it's cold and you can kind of curl up with it. Or when it's a nice hot day like today outside, I don't mind, eating a big bowl of mac and cheese there too. So it always makes me feel good and makes me feel homely. And it's just nice to maybe, curl up in front of a movie with a nice big comforting bowl of mac and cheese. Comfort food. So if you cook along with me, I'll go down the list. So some of it I've kind of pre-prepared. But we have our half cup of butter. That's a little dark, quarter cup of butter, my bad. And a quarter cup of flour. What we're going to do with these is make a roux. So a roux, if you haven't come across it before, is just something that you use to thicken a sauce. So it's equal parts fat and flour. And we're going to melt the butter, we're going to add the flour, and we're going to make a sauce base, and that's going to allow our sauce to be nice and thick. We have, of course, our macaroni. Similar to what you find in a box of KD. I've eaten a lot of KD since I came to Canada. I know it's a thing here. We've got a few things that are kind of optional, but I'm gonna add them in. So we've got some Panko breadcrumbs. So these are traditionally used in Japanese cooking, but I like to put them on top of my mac and cheese before it goes in the oven because it gives a bit of a crunch on the top, which is really nice. I also like really spicy food. You may not, so you don't have to put these in. But I'm going to add a little bit of cayenne pepper and a little bit of paprika. I've also got some fresh jalapeños. Again, spicy food, so that's going to make it nice and hot, but you don't have to put these in if you don't like spicy food. And of course, the star of the show, lots and lots of cheese. And that's going to be everything. Okay, let's go. So the first thing you want to do, if you're cooking along at home, is preheat your oven. So you want to preheat that to 350 degrees. We'll allow that to kind of warm up while we make everything else. I can see somebody's gone to the oven, so I'll just give it a couple of seconds. Perfect. And we're going to need a couple of pans. So I have one for making my macaroni and one for making my sauce. And we're going to start with the macaroni. So what you want to do is fill your pan, probably about halfway full, depends on the size of your pan. But you want it to cover all of the macaroni that's going to be in there, so we can boil it up and make it a little bit soft before we cook it. So I'm just going to fill this up over here. There we go. Quinn, can you show? Yeah. So I filled that up just a little bit more than halfway. And I'm gonna put that on a high heat. And what we want to do before we start cooking our pasta is we want that to just start boiling. So I'm gonna put that on the highest heat you can on max. And I always like to, when I'm cooking pasta, just add a little bit of salt as well to the water, so it kind of cooks in the salt. So you can add just about a tablespoon is good. But again, it's kind of up to you, depending on if you prefer it saltier or less salt. So we need to wait for the water to boil before we can put the noodles in. But while we're doing that, we can start making the roux, which is going to be the base to our cheese sauce. So we're going to be adding 3 cups of milk to our roux as well. Okay, so I'm going to move to cooker area, and Quinn, are you okay to? We're going to try and bring the camera over so you can see what's going on, because I don't want to cook with my back to you here. So
I'm the camera helper.
I'm the camera helper. So cool. So we're going to take our roux pan and we're going to put it on probably about a medium to hot heat. So I know a lot of these things are different. My heat goes from 1 to 9. I'm going to put this on about a 6. So just a little bit more than halfway. And we can immediately just add all of the butter into the pan. And then my butter's kind of melted here, so I'm gonna need to wash my hands. It's gonna get messy. I didn't say it was tidy, but it will be delicious. What's going to be helpful if you're following along and you're making your roux? So when we're mixing it, one of the best things to mix it with is a whisk. If you don't have a whisk, you can still use either a spoon or a fork. That'll be fine. But I find things kind of mix together a little bit well with the whisk. So we just want to let our butter melt down. And you can see it's kind of starting to melt there. It's going to take a couple of minutes. So while we're waiting for that, I'm going to measure out the milk because I didn't do that already. So I'm going to measure this into a bowl.
Getting a bowl. So resume shortly.
Sorry, I forgot to prepare this bit. So I need 3 cups of this. I've got my handy cup measuring tool. 1. That's 2. And 3. And our butter's starting to get nice and melted now too. So what you can do if you're following along is if your butter's kind of hot from the fridge or it's blocky, just give it a stir as it's melting and try and break up all those bigger chunks. And what we want is we're going to want to kind of want it to turn to a pure liquid before we add any flour to it. I think mine is just about melted too. So what we want to do is you take your flour and you just want to gradually add just a little bit of flour in at a time. So I would put maybe about a quarter to a half of what you have in your bowl, and just start whisking that in. And what you're going to notice is when you first mix the flour in, it's gonna kind of lump together in the butter. And the whisk is really good. This is why I like using the whisk, is because you want to try and get rid of those lumps. We want this to be smooth. So we're just going to keep whisking until those lumps disappear. You can see they're starting to go away now, and we've just got liquid again. And what this is going to do is going to thicken the butter up. So this is how you kind of traditionally make like white sauces, like a cheese sauce. But one shortcut you can do if you don't want to do this, or if you don't have flour, is you can use cornstarch. A lot of people use that, and you can add that to milk, and that will also thicken things up, and you don't have to make the roux. So I'm just going to add the rest of the flour. And I'm going to keep whisking that. This should turn into a nice paste. You can whisk with a fork or a spoon for sure. Yeah, so I think a fork's probably slightly better. Yeah, if you don't have a whisk, you can just kind of, it's easy if you bring it all to kind of one area of the pan and just kind of whisk through like that, and that helps kind of break up all those lumps. The thing about a roux as well is it can actually affect how the sauce tastes. So if you make a very basic roux like we're doing now, and you don't cook it for a super long time, it'll be kind of a lighter sauce. But you can also make what's called a dark roux or a brown roux, where you let it cook for longer, and that'll give the sauce kind of a nuttier taste. So what we're looking for now is we want our roux to be bubbling. So you can see there's bubbles from the heat. Once it starts bubbling, we want to keep one eye on it and let it cook for probably about a minute, no longer than a minute, 40 seconds to a minute.
Ian, I see Denise has sent you a question directly. She's wondering what type of milk and what type of flour you're using.
So flour, I'm using all-purpose. And milk, I'm just using 2% milk because that's what I have in the fridge, and that'll work just fine. But I suspect if you use one of the higher fat milks, it'll probably taste a bit better because that's what makes it taste so good. So, but I just use 2% milk and that'll work fine. I think you can use pretty much any milk. I don't know if you can use almond milk and coconut milk and things like that. Never tried that before. That would be interesting though. Okay, so our roux kind of bubbled there. We can see it's kind of gone a nice golden color. And it's nice and thick, so we can start adding in our liquid to it. So the key to adding the liquid is to do it gradually. Again, just like we did with the flour, we don't want to put it all in one go. We just want to gradually add a little bit at a time. I'm just going to take it off the heat. I'm going to add about a quarter of what I have there, or maybe a little more than a quarter. Oops. And then once you've added it, you can just put it on the heat. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit as well to about a 4 because I don't want it to bubble up too much. And then you just gently keep whisking. And what we want to do, we want the milk and the roux to all combine, and it should start to become nice and shiny and glossy, so it becomes kind of a thicker sauce. You can let that gently heat for a bit. Make sure all of the lumps are gone. The one thing to note as well, the other thing that's going to thicken our sauce up is we're going to add the cheese to it. So that's going to make the sauce quite a bit thicker as well. So we don't want a super thick sauce to start with because, yeah, the cheese is going to melt into the sauce and that's going to make it real thick too. So our water's now boiling. So I don't know if you're following along. How's your water looking that you started to boil earlier? Is it bubbling or? We're going to add our macaroni to the water, and then I like to just give it a bit of a stir so it doesn't stick to the bottom right away. Probably want that to cook without the lid on for about 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And the roux, how's the roux going on that end? So as you can see, mine's kind of everything's mixed in right now. So that means we can now start to add the cheese and any spices you want to add. So I'm gonna add my chili peppers. I like it spicy. I already diced these up pretty small. I left a lot of the seeds in, so the seeds are what make the chilies hot. So if you're adding chilies and you don't like them as hot, you can take out some of the seeds. I like it spicy, so I'm gonna leave those in. I'm just gonna add those to my mixture. And then I'm gonna add the paprika that I talked about. So I would add about a teaspoon of this, but I'm just going to kind of guess and whisk that in. And then since I like it extra spicy, I'm going to add a teaspoon of cayenne pepper, but I'm not going to guess this time because it's really hot. So I don't want to burn my mouth. Perfect. And now what we can do is start adding our cheese. And this is where the sauce is going to start to get nice and thick too. So I'm just going to add about a handful, and I'm just going to sprinkle it in. So if you sprinkle it, the cheese spreads out more in the mixture, and it's easier to get rid of the lumps when it's cooking. So it's good to kind of just spread it out. So in this recipe, I'm using cheddar, sharp cheddar, like English cheddar. And I use that in a lot of stuff because I love cheddar. So I like it on my baked potatoes, on top of my chili. It's always cheddar. But I also like you know, I like cheeses that aren't from the UK as well. I like to make a Greek salad with feta cheese. We had some halloumi cheese recently, which you can barbecue. But for mac and cheese, I always go cheddar, but a lot of people also put in Parmesan and Gouda cheese as well. They're also really good, as long as it's kind of melt, and it has to be kind of a strong cheese. If you put in like too weak, like too creamier cheese, it won't taste very cheesy in your sauce. So you kind of want a strong cheese flavor. So I'd go with the cheddar, and I'd go with a sharp cheddar rather than a mild cheddar.
What are some of your favorite cheese brands?
My favorite cheese brands all have weird names because they're from the UK. So there's one called Black Bomber, which is delicious. There's one called Coastal. I like to get my cheese at Costco because I can get a really big block of cheese. So that's looking great. Have you added some cheese in there? Awesome. So I'm going to add my second handful of cheese. I'm just going to sprinkle that in. I noticed as well, since my heat was down a little bit, the cheese wasn't melted so good. So I've just increased my heat back up to 6, just to help the cheese melt along. We're going to save some of this cheese as well. We're going to add more into the mix, but it's really nice when you're baking mac and cheese is to sprinkle some on the top before you put it in the oven. So we're going to save some of this to do that. I'm just going to check on my macaroni, which is starting to look pretty done.
Ian,
Yes.
when you're making the macaroni, can you put oil in the water so it doesn't stick?
Yes, good tip. A lot of people do that. So I don't normally do it so much with this because I know that I'm going to cover it in cheese and put it in a tray. But yeah, when I'm cooking like other pastas, I'll always put a little bit of oil in to stop it clumping together. That's a really good tip. Do you cook a lot of pasta?
Well, my caregiver does a lot of pastas and stuff, and he puts oil in the water so things don't stick together.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. Very good. Okay, I'm going to add my third handful of cheese. And I think that might be the last. I think I'm going to save the rest of it. So I've got about a quarter of my cheese left. I'm going to save that to put on the top. Also, I feel like my macaroni is done. So you'll know when it's done when the noodles are kind of soft. So I kind of just take a couple out and I put them on a piece of kitchen paper. And I just kind of test them with a fork. You got to be careful because they're a little hot. But if they're kind of soft and you can squish them with a fork, then they're probably done. So I'm going to turn this off. And I'm going to drain it because I need to get rid of the water. So when you do this, watch for the hot steam. You don't want that kind of rising up into your face. It's not very nice. And let's make sure we get all of the noodles from the bottom. Perfect. Let me get my roux or my sauce, another stir. You can see I've kind of got a lot of cheesy strands going on in there. So I just want to mix that up, make sure it's nice and melted.
Are you whisking now or are you mixing?
I'm whisking. I'm always whisking. Always whisking with this so that the cheese doesn't kind of get caught in clumps, and I'm just trying to get everything combined. So I'm probably gonna also burning. So what I can do while that's cooking is we can take our tray. I've got 2 sizes. I wasn't sure how big the mac and cheese I was going to make, but I'm just going to start by mac into this tray here. And I'll kind of see how much is there. And that's a pretty good amount, so I think I'm going to go with this size. Yeah, so you want to, when you're putting your mac in the tray, you want to leave a little bit of room on top. You want to leave a little bit of room to mix your sauce in first, because we're going to have to kind of turn this. And you want to leave a little bit of room on top to add your grated cheese and add your breadcrumbs too.
The sauce is really lumpy.
Your sauce is really lumpy?
Yeah.
Just try turning up the heat a bit and whisking it a bit more.
Do you want to see? I'll show you what Ian's sauce looks like. Here, can you turn it up a bit, Ian? Give it a kind of, and then maybe move your hand slightly. Yeah. So see, it's not too lumpy.
I have a few lumps. Some of my cheese is kind of stringy, so I've got some stringy cheese there. But yeah, if you've got any big lumps, I would just try turning up the heat a little bit and just keep with. Are you using a whisk or a fork, Lindsay?
Whisk.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I would just keep trying to whisk it and try and break through any lumps with like the kind of spokes on the whisk. So the long metal bits, just try and break through any of the lumps there. I think this is almost done. Yeah, and sometimes if your heat is too low, the lumps can be that your cheese didn't melt. So you can just try turning up the heat a bit. But if you do that, because you've got milk and, in the pan, you don't want it to burn on the bottom of the pan. So if you turn up the heat, I'm at about a 6 to a 7 now. You just want to make sure that you're moving it pretty much constantly. It's okay if it sits still for a couple of seconds, but you don't want it to burn on the bottom of the pan, because then that's going to affect the whole taste of the sauce. It's also not going to be very fun to clean. So my sauce is about ready to go on my mac. How are the lumps doing? They're coming out? It smells really cheesy in here.
Smells very good.
I wish you could smell it. I wish they could invent it and this through the Zoom. Okay. So I'm just waiting to see. Perfect.
You maybe want to remind people how you're going to kick up and customize your mac and cheese today?
Yeah, so I'm customizing mine with my chili and my panko breadcrumbs. But what a lot of people also do is you can add broccoli if you like veggies. Obviously, it's good for you. Doesn't make the dish any better for you. It's still a lot of cheese. A lot of people add things like pulled pork. I don't eat meat, so I don't add any of that stuff. But a lot of people will make pork or ham and add that in, or Canadian bacon. People can fry bacon, they can add that in. But basically, you just take, if there's anything like that you want to add, you cook it pretty much normally as you would cook it. You just fry your bacon off, and then you just add it to your sauce before you put it in the mac. So if you want to customize it with anything like that, you can just go ahead. It's a nice creative dish. You can put in whatever you want. So if this food type you really love, you could go ahead and try it. Some things would work better than others. I wouldn't put Reese's Pieces in here. That would taste kind of weird, but veggies, things like that. So you want to leave, so mine's almost full, but there's about a centimeter of space on the top. I'm leaving a little bit of room because I'm going to pour the sauce on and I want to stir it in. And if I fill it too high, the sauce is just going to spill out the top. And also, before we bake it, we're going to put some of the cheese on top so it goes nice and crispy in the oven. And we're going to add a breadcrumb. So we want to leave a little bit of room on the top for that as well. And then we're ready. You're ready to add your sauce. So you can take your sauce. I'm going to try not to spill this everywhere. So we're just going to take it and we're just going to pour it all over the top and let it kind of fall through the macaroni. You want to try and cover it all. stir it through. And the best way to kind of stir it through is, because we left ourselves a little bit of space on the top, it's not going to spill over, is you just dig to the bottom, and you want to bring the pasta from the bottom to the top, because you don't want any of the pasta on the bottom to not be saucy. You want this all to be a nice saucy pasta. So, and if your bowl is glass like mine, you can kind of see that it goes all the way through. Okay, so once that's mixed through, all we need to do is add the last bit of cheese that we have on the top. I kept quite a bit here. I told you I like cheese, so. Sprinkle the cheese over the top. And then finally, we just take some of our breadcrumbs that we looked at earlier. These are just going to make it nice and crunchy on the top. I normally just take a handful and I just sprinkle them over. And if you want it crunchier, add more of these. If you're not so bothered, so if you don't care about it being crunchy, you can just leave these out or add less. But I like to add quite a lot because I like kind of the crunchy texture on the top. So I got these ones, I think I got these from a little market right next to my apartment. But also I saw them, you can get them in the supermarket like Whole Foods or Safeway, or I think they're often hard to find, but I think they're normally with the bakery stuff. So where you find the flour and the yeast and things like that for baking, you normally find them there too. That looks great.
The pot, the bottom of the pot burnt.
Oh no, did it? Okay,
Yeah.
so what probably happened there is when you were heating the milk up, it probably if you stop stirring, it burns onto the bottom. It should be okay. It's just not going to be very fun to clean. So, have you added your cheese on top of the? Did you keep some cheese to add on top?
No, I put it all in.
Oh, you went all in. That's fine. That works. So yours is like a KD. So yours is more traditional than mine. And are you putting breadcrumbs on? Nice. Yeah, just sprinkle them on the top, and they'll go crispy in the oven. So I'll show you mine. I put quite a lot on. You don't have to put as many on. It's kind of difficult to see in the light, but I've covered the top with breadcrumbs. And then all we need to do from that point is put it in the oven, and it's going to take about 30 minutes to cook. So I'm just going to put it right in the middle. That's it. So in 30 minutes time, I'm going to set a timer on my phone. It's at 350. Yeah. So it's quite a low heat. It's a kind of a slow cook, so it's yeah, it's not going to burn on the top, but it's always good to keep an eye on it as well. Just watch that it's not getting too brown on the top. And that's it. So yeah, it's just going to take a little while for that to bake, but we should have delicious mac and cheese.
So I don't know if it's going to finish baking by the time this call is done, but what I can do is we have a photo of what Ian's mac and cheese looks like, and we could screen share if everyone wants to see what the final product will approximately be. Here.
Oh, nice. Perfect.
That's what a delicious pan of Ian's mac and cheese looks like that I often have the great pleasure of eating.
You're the taste tester.
Yes, I take my job very seriously.
And it goes really well. Mac and cheese, I like to eat it with some salad, or it goes really well with garlic bread. I don't make my own garlic bread. I just get it from the store. So, yeah. But also keep an eye on it, okay? And just make sure that it doesn't start to get too it wants to be kind of golden brown on the top. Like your breadcrumbs want to be kind of nice and brown, and you don't want it to get burnt on the top. So just keep an eye out as well. It should take about 30 minutes.
Kind of a fun topping idea. My family, when we would grow up eating mac and cheese, I don't know how common this is, but we'd always put ketchup on when it was finished, and we'd like mix ketchup in to like add some extra kick.
Yeah. I've also heard of people, if you don't have breadcrumbs to go on the top, what people do is like tortilla chips, the thing, you know, where you dip in salsa. If you crush those up and you can sprinkle those on top, like the corn chips, apparently that works really good as well. I haven't tried it, but I can't imagine it's going to taste bad.